The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. I will skip the intro today because we have the commissioner of the NBA on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. He's in Springfield right now for the Hall of Fame ceremonies, and he's here right now. David Stern, what's happening?
It's great in Springfield. We had a very nice dinner last night. Jim Durham, Alexander Wolf, Brian McIntyre were honored. Three winners of the Manny Jackson Humanitarian Award. It was really a fun night, and all of the inductees that are going into the hall tonight were there.
No Reggie Miller, though. Didn't make the cut this year.
I don't make the decisions at the Hall of Fame.
I know you don't. Hey, is there any chance you're going overseas to be a commissioner of some European league that I don't know about?
I might. Why?
I don't know. It seems like the in thing to do right now. Everybody's going overseas. Everybody's threatening to go overseas.
I'll consider my options. It depends. No, it's all that stuff is better to read about than it is to actually do. But for players who are at the margins of their team, I can understand why they would get a good deal overseas and play. There's the one thing that's great about our sport is the number of very good basketball players that there are.
Right. I got to be honest. I think this is the maddest I've ever been at you.
That's okay. That's why it's always a pleasure to speak to you. It's usually to set you straight.
Well, in this case, it's going to be a lot harder to set me straight because I don't like where this is going. I don't understand where the urgency is. I don't understand why people don't seem to care more. That you guys had an unbelievable season last year, and things were set up for an even better season this year. I just feel like you and Billy Hunter should be locked in some crappy hotel room until you figure this out. Where is the urgency right now?
Well, I would say that I remain optimistic that we're going to make a deal. And I think that the urgency is set in a certain way by the rejection of our underlying premise. That is, this is the time to have a reset. This is the time to try to hold for the players most of what they have and sort of grow our way out of the situation we find ourselves in. The players very strongly disagree, and to this point, don't even want to discuss it. In other words, we've said to them, the average salary is over $5 million. We think that we can keep your compensation, including benefits, at that number. That makes you the highest paid union in the world, and we're going to keep it at that while we grow our way out of this. And the players throw around words like greedy, arrogant, and a variety of other things that would tend to inflame things. And I think our owners have been remarkably calm because the logic of where we're going is hard to disagree with. We need a reset in the amount of compensation. We need sort of shorter contracts so we can align pay with performance, and we need to get a little bit more competitive. It's not brain surgery.
Right, but to be fair, they made you a proposal, and as far as I know, you guys didn't make them an official counter-proposal.
Well, right? At some point when the proposal is that in light of today's economics, we would like to go in 6 years from a $5 million average to a $7 million average salary. it really makes no sense, none, and doesn't even begin to respond to the issues that you've commented on and that we've discussed with them. So I think the logic is so compelling that when the players get briefed on where we are and they understand it, so we can get rid of a lot of the debris that somehow has been thrown in here, then this will begin to move.
Yeah, but at the same time, they made a proposal. Like if I'm trying to buy a car from you, and I offer you $15,000, and you say, no way, and you don't even tell me what the price of the car is, how can I buy the car?
Well, actually, we said, why don't you sit down and let's discuss it, and we had a meeting set up for yesterday, and then Adam Silver spoke to Ron Klempner, I spoke to Billy, and in effect they said to us the same way. They said it. Our guys don't want to have a meeting unless you're going to make a new proposal. And we said, well, it's too bad. So they canceled the meeting because we wanted to talk about it. You never know what comes out in the conversation. But that's their right, and I understand that. It's not a big deal. They've got a lot of education to do with their players. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like this is rocket science. Like you have the players are getting 57% of the basketball-related revenue right now. It's too high. The contracts can go up to 6 years. That's too long. We should go shorter contracts. And if you did a 50-50 split, aren't we like two-thirds of the way there?
You don't know the numbers exactly, but we'd like to take out some more expenses and then have a 50-50 split after the expenses, and we said that. And the big issue is we have asked the players to take an 8% cut. And the players
you mean a pay cut from the salaries they're already guaranteed?
From the $2.2 billion total, our proposal was $2 billion, and hold it while we try to grow out of where we find ourselves. And if we do very well, and we grow more than, let's say, 4% a year, they'll under our projections and theirs, they'll do better than $2 billion, and it will start to grow. And they know that. And so when they came back and they said, we got a better idea, you should give us a 35% increase over 6 years, and it should go from 5.1 million or whatever the exact number is to 7.1. We said, whoa, we're not even on the same planet, no less the same ballpark, to use another sport.
Well,
but I think it has to sink in, because from what I read, and you know it, we got individual players saying, well, they're not showing us the books. Wrong. We've given them their books, and behind closed doors, we're well past that. You know, you can argue whether we lost 300 or 150 or whatever, and this is about profitability. We're going to make it profitable. This is what you do in collective bargaining. And after you make it profitable, then you say, okay, there's a huge disparity of profits, so we're going to have revenue sharing. The idea that you can have revenue sharing is going to help you when you're losing money doesn't make any sense at all, because there's not enough money to revenue share. If the whole league as a whole is losing $300 million, you could take away money from the top teams and give it to the lower teams, but at the end of the day, with all the reshuffling, you're still going to be losing $300 million.
Do you guys regret throwing that number out? It's either been $340 million or $370 million, but you've been
No, it's actually going down. We went from, I think, 400 to 370 to 340, and this year we're going to be at 3. But no matter how you slice it, and I don't mind, people say, oh, it shouldn't be this, you shouldn't count this or this. Okay, fine. But behind closed doors, they say, listen, guys, this is what the lawyer for the union said to us. We don't think that you should do better than break even.
Right.
And we think that your problem is that you've lost X, and we're prepared to help you by delivering half of X. You make up the other half X, and then you'll be at break even. And our owners think and say, well, we're grossing $4+ billion. We're guaranteeing the players a percentage literally off the top, and we have 5,000 other people that are generating that in addition to the 400-plus players, taking nothing away from the importance of the players and the product on the court. But the reality is that the way those dollars get made is from the sweat of 5,000 other people as well as the players. And the players are telling the owners and those people, well, you should be allowed to break even. That's not going to cut it.
At the same time, like I had somebody who worked for a team tell me that they had a $5 million loss 2 years ago, and they reported it as 12. Like there's a lot of ways with amortization, all these other ways to fudge what those numbers are. And if the numbers were that bad, why are people still buying NBA teams? Why did the Sixers get bought? Why did the Pistons get bought? Why recently did the Hawks get bought? Why are people buying into a league that's losing money?
But now you're jumping around, and it doesn't become you. If somebody was misreporting a loss, I can assure you that isn't the case in terms of the documents we've turned over to the players. Okay. We're well past that. Okay, well past that. We've provided not only the audited reports, but the state and federal income tax returns. So no one's committing any felonies here. All right, that's number one.
Well, it's not a felony. It's just you can kind of twist numbers around to how they suit you.
No, because we invite
accounting
the
101.
No, the players have accountants. They have economists. The numbers are there. We would be happy and have engaged in them. And actually, they don't dispute it. So why are you disputing it? Because
they are disputing it, though.
No, they're not. They're saying.
But that's one of the common refrains from the players, is that you guys are lying.
No. That was said a while ago. The truth is, giving Billy Hunter his due, he says, well, we don't think you should include these two items. Okay, you shouldn't include interest, which is an expense, and you shouldn't include amortization, which is a depreciation, I guess, which is what you do. This is not about buying the team and depreciating or amortizing the player contract. It has nothing to do with that. We've excluded that a long time ago. What this is if you buy a scoreboard and you spend $10 million for it, you're not allowed to deduct that as an expense in the year you spent it. So what you do is you depreciate it, let's say $2 million a year for 5 years. This is money that was really spent, and you account for it in 5 different years. Somebody who says that you shouldn't count that is basically saying you shouldn't count as an expense something that you spent money on, and that makes no sense. But even under Billy's formulation, it's, if we're losing 340, he would say we were losing 200. Right. And so the point to us, and we're happy to move on from it, is we're not making a profit, and we're going to use this collective bargaining negotiation to do what all employers do. They use it to make their business profitable.
Is it fair to say, if I'm a new owner, let's say I'm thinking about buying the Hawks, at some point I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to find out what are your plans for this new system? Where is this going? How am I sure that this league is going to be profitable?
Well,
is it fair to... Wait, hold on. Is
you're
it
not
fair
sure.
To say,
you can never be sure. There's no guarantee here, and we're not seeking a guarantee. But what we say to an owner, we say, look, the reason you're going to be able to buy it with very little cash and at a very low valuation is because we are suffering seller fatigue. Our teams ownership of our teams, they're tired of writing checks. So if you write a check that is modest these days, and you assume some debts, then as business gets, and you sell tickets better than the team from whom you bought, then you're going to be able to make a profit because we're going to lower the percentage. It makes no sense to have it at the current rate. And between the digital world and the international world, there really is a business here because artistically our sport is at the top.
Yep, and ratings are great. But you're probably promising at least some of these teams a revenue sharing system that's not in place yet, right?
But there is going to be a revenue sharing. I must tell you that our owners, the big ones that you like to have fun with in your
I do.
podcasts, which I refuse to admit that I've either listened to or read the transcripts of. They're on board. The Bulls, the Lakers, the Knicks.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I represent it to you.
All right, I'll believe it when I see it.
They fundamentally say that we understand that we depend on other teams to come into our building. And we're prepared to, share revenue, because some of our owners would tell you that when there's a huge deal that one team makes, it raises everyone's cap under a cap system. So there has to be an accountability of what that does. And the Lakers and the Knicks and the Bulls are all right up there. And I've never seen such unity of purpose amongst our owners. Yes, we need a new CBA, and we have to accompany it with more robust revenue sharing. And revenue sharing that doesn't just give the money away, but holds teams accountable for their own economic performance as well. That's probably should be more contentious at some level than the CBA negotiations, but they're both proceeding, at a at a similar pace. We're just further along on revenue sharing than we are on the CBA, but the contours have been drawn.
Here's what I don't understand about that. I don't understand why the NBA has to have that level of revenue sharing. Like, you look at football. Yeah, football makes sense. The NFL makes sense to have revenue sharing because it's a TV-driven league. So much of the money they make is from the TV rights. With you guys, you're actually in a better position if the big markets are good. And if the bigger the market, the higher the TV rating, things like that. Like, it's almost doesn't totally make sense to have Indiana be good.
Bill, step back. You can't say to an owner of a team that says, listen, we think you should forever be consigned to a second place or second class citizenship because we're going to have a system that allows teams that generate more money to do better. In fact, the NFL is exactly the opposite of that. They have huge revenue sharing through the largest source, which is network TV, but also through their gates. And so they have a history of revenue sharing that predates what we do. It's already built in. And they do some modest additional revenue sharing. So they are the revenue sharers, at the top of the class, and they wind up with a New Orleans or a Green Bay or a Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl. That's great. That's great.
Okay.
And you can't tell an owner, I got a great idea. You should come in and spend this money and obligate yourself, but really don't ever expect to be able to challenge for a championship. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, but San Antonio did it. They were a small market.
Okay, and there's a model to be drawn, but even San Antonio has lost money because of their losses are increasing as the percentage is beginning to eat away at even the teams that were able to be profitable in the small market. So San Antonio is going to be a recipient over time, whether they are in day one or not. If you have a robust revenue sharing system, we're going to hold teams accountable for getting the most out of their market. But if having done that, they still need help to compete, we want them to compete, they want to compete, and our large teams want them to compete.
Well, we should mention that the owner of San Antonio, Peter Holt, is probably your most respected owner and probably your most powerful owner. So I think it's interesting that you're gravitating toward this revenue sharing system that helps him. You don't see the dichotomy with that? Or no?
I don't even. We've got a labor relations committee that is composed of everyone from Jim Dolan of New York to Jerry Buss of L.A. to Clay Bennett of Oklahoma City. We are so well represented across the spectrum that it's not about, in the NBA, it's not about this powerful owner or that powerful owner. It's really a consensus amongst 30 owners, and in the case of our Labor Relations Committee, which is there to effectuate the will of the board, there's unanimity of purpose and there's agreement on all the principles.
But here's what I don't get. I mean, you've been having issues with your labor agreement basically since the mid-'90s. And there's a thing on YouTube now. NBC has this Lockout special from 1998. And all the stuff that they're hitting in this special is the same stuff you guys are arguing about now. I mean, you could make the case that the players have won the last 3 labor deals, and now you're trying to really blow this up and recreate the system.
Actually,
is it?
I agree that you can make the case that they won the last 3 negotiations, but actually, maybe I haven't gotten any smarter, but we're not trying to blow it up. We're actually saying we're prepared to give you, for the most part, the benefits of the system for which you have negotiated, except we have to reset it by you taking an 8% decrease in your compensation, and we need shorter contracts, and we have to align, in some ways, pay for performance, which is, even one of the proposals we made, you'll appreciate this, we said, listen, if you have a contract that's too large, that you want to get rid of because it's stale, the player's not performing, what we should allow our teams to do is spread it over multiple years so that the player will still get his money, but there will be cap room to replace him, rather than the system that we currently have where, because of the cap placement of that contract, they cannot get a better player to fill that spot. They have no money. Right. So this is all about making our teams more competitive, hardening the cap, and aligning pay with performance. And yes, the players are being asked to take an 8% pay cut.
I am all for player performance stuff because, and this is what I think the weakness in the players' union argument is that they take no responsibility for some of their guys who have signed big contracts and then not lived up for them, gotten out of shape, kind of mailed it in. I think you guys do need to be protected from that, and the logic that, wait, listen, we're not putting a gun to your head and telling you to sign that guy. Like, I don't think you can think that way. I think you have to take responsibility.
I'm actually going to defend our players to some extent.
Whoa, you're defending the players.
And defend our owners to some extent. Okay. The money has to get paid out. We're paying out the 57%, no matter what, under the old deal. So yes, there are teams that when they start competing for real or perceived talent, they perhaps spend it on ways that they shouldn't. We come back and say, you know what? That's why shorter contracts make sense, because then when the bad or stale contracts or underperforming contracts expire, that can be re-expressed to players who are playing and deserve it. And the players say, whoa, that's no good. Because you got to be able to play for your career contract. It's very important as an individual matter. And so, you could see the way the discussion around the table goes. And we then said we need lower guarantees of contracts. And the players said, no, the most important thing is guaranteed contracts. So we said, you know what? We see it in the context of shorter contracts. We'll agree to it. And they said, well, that's no big deal. We have guaranteed contracts already. So that's the circle that the negotiations go in. But I think the contours, the outline of what has to be done here, a reset in the percentage, a shortening of contracts, a hardening of the cap, and the continued alignment of pay for performance. That will make this a much stronger league. It will move our teams to profitability, and it will provide the basis for revenue sharing.
I agree with that, but here's my counter to everything you just said. If I'm from the player side, I don't feel like you guys have exhausted enough opportunities to make revenue from the league that you have. Like, why don't you have sponsored jerseys? How much money are you leaving on the table by not doing that?
Well, I know you think we're dumb, but we're not quite as dumb as you make us out to be.
I don't
because that's an assessment that we do continually. But once a sponsor decides that they want to spend tens of millions of dollars on sponsoring a jersey, then they're going to lower the expression of their support on team broadcasts, on network broadcasts, even on podcasts, because you do have an issue. So it's not the panacea that you think it is.
I don't agree with that. Because I hear that.
I'm going to hire you to sell it for us. That's all you're on.
Well, listen, I think it's a lazy way to think in terms of selling ads, because people think like, oh, they only have $20 million to spend, and they're not going to want to spend more. I mean, it's your job to come up with a a creative way for them to spend more money on your
By
product,
the way,
right?
I mean, listen, you're talking to, at some point, I'm going to feign, indignance, because we started out here, when in 1983, the first salary cap was $3.2 million, not per player,
Right.
per team, okay, with a minimum of 1.8 and an average salary of about $250. Okay, the reason that has been driven upward to the $5 million it is and to the 60 some odd million that the cap is because we've gotten every penny. We've been creative. We create networks. We create .com sites. We create categories. We create sponsorship categories. We talk to our teams about the way they sell suites and groups and club seats and local TV. So the one thing that I can tell you is that the 30 teams of the NBA and the NBA League office working together have propelled the revenues up. I would say that to the largest beneficiaries of that are the players, because they've been getting 57% with a guarantee that even if the contracts don't quite reach 57%, we'll write them a check for the difference. And so on behalf of the thousands of people who are working very hard, in all deference as you sit there in the sunshine of Los Angeles talking about their absence of creativity, I protest.
Right. Well, here's a good example. 1983, Rick Welch goes to Lawrence O'Brien and he says, I had this idea for an all-star weekend. You guys are making money off that weekend now, right? Like, that's a successful weekend that
we
makes a little money for you.
It doesn't matter. We consider it, we consider it to be, whatever we make, we spend. It may not be the smartest thing, but what we do is we treat that as a place to entertain our international broadcasters, our sponsors, our licensees. I don't think we make money, but we don't lose a lot.
Okay. But, I can't really come up with a lot of different ideas that you guys have come up with over the last decade, other than all the stuff you have done digitally, which has been fantastic.
Oh, you mean other than invent, be the first or early to have a TV network, a digital TV network, to be selling our own TV in 215 countries and 43 languages, to be right there on YouTube with 600 million video views, to do webcasts, to do, and actually in terms of sponsorships, to you name it, we wrap it. We were the first to do pole wraps, vomitoriums in the building, the edges of the floor, underneath the scoreboard. Come on, Bill, you sit there, look around when you go to a Clipper game.
Well, so you're saying that you've done your job, you've done everything you can do, and now you just need money from the players.
No. We will actually, to the contrary, we continue to do our job. We will continue to raise the money, and we will spend whatever it takes to raise it. But if you have to pay 57% out of every dollar, you can't do it. So we need a better split. It's not that we only get it from the players. To the contrary, we're projecting robust revenue sharing growth, robust revenue growth, and we will be able to share, and the players will take a percentage that makes sense. And I just might add here, the NFL, the most profitable of all sports leagues, says it wants to be more profitable. Its players agreed to a double-digit concession, and our players say, no, sorry, can't work. There's something wrong with this picture, and that's why actually I think that the picture will come into clearer focus as our players come to understand what the owners are actually offering and what they've done to open their books and why they want to make the changes that they want to make.
Question. If the big markets generate the most revenue for the league, why don't you put more teams in the big market? Or does that make too much sense?
Well, I would say that then they wouldn't be big markets anymore. They'd be split markets, and you don't know for sure what the impact of is having yet additional teams in. And there is a certain appeal to having a national league represented on a national basis rather than having all of your teams in the greater L.A. area or the greater New York area.
Yeah, but you have
could theoretically
25
put
cities
7
already.
teams in each of New York and L.A., but I must say, having grown up as a baseball fan and learned about cities in this country from baseball, I think there's a really good reason to make yourself into a national sport.
Yeah, but if I'm buying into the NBA, I have a much better chance of succeeding in Anaheim than I do in New Orleans or Charlotte. I have a much better chance of succeeding as the second Chicago team than succeeding in New Orleans, Charlotte, Memphis, a bunch of these other cities. Like, at some point, don't you have to think more logically about revenue?
Yes, you may or you may not, and that's what you have to say when you analyze and look at the numbers. The fact of the matter is that New Orleans, we're now approaching 9,000 season tickets. We're looking at a possible new cable deal. We're having a very large impact on sponsorships, and there's a state subsidy right now, which we're seeking to have continued. And when we complete all of that, I think the team will be, not a small market team in terms of revenue, and there'll be a very good chance at having a buyer say, I want that team and I want it in that market.
But we're over a year now where nobody has said that.
No. There are many people who say it, but we don't want to do it yet because we want to get it ready for for prime time, so to speak. We want to make sure we get the season tickets up to 10,000. We want to develop a robust revenue sharing model if they need it. Under our theory of going forward, we think that if we do the sponsorship, we do the cable, we do the season tickets and the suites, it won't even need revenue sharing. And so we've had 4 or 5 people come to us and we said, we're not ready yet. We'll talk to you, after all these things are put in place and after the new collective bargaining agreement is done, so we know what the future is going to hold.
Right. Billy Hunter, he said a bunch of stuff. He's been lobbing grenades left and right the last 2 months. You haven't totally responded. How have you been able to keep your cool with all that stuff?
Because there's something because I have been working for the players longer than Billy has. My work goes back 40 years, and I'm very proud, even though you can tell me that I've been out-negotiated 3 times. Accepting that, I'm still proud of the place we've come to, the salaries that the players are making. They make it because 5,000 people at the teams and the league office work very hard, and I'm invested in keeping the rhetoric down so we can continue the growth that our players have had. And in this day and age, given the economic circumstances that are going on out there, with respect to the stock market, with respect to the European countries that look like they're falling, with respect, and as an economic matter, and with respect to getting owners to both buy teams and continue to invest in them, lobbing grenades is not a good thing to do. It's not good for business. It's not good for sponsors. It's not good for fans. And so we're trying to keep ourselves aligned in the right way, and we think that Billy is going to do the same thing.
Billy said about you, I don't think he has the sway that he once did. I'm not saying that he's not the commissioner and doesn't have the power to act, but I don't know that he has the unfettered, dying support that he had before. Maybe there's a little crack in the dike. What'd you think of that?
I smiled at it. He gives great fodder to my owners who want to say, you see, David, your vulnerability is showing. Why are you telling us what to do, and why are we listening to us? We should listen. Why are we listening to you? We should listen to Billy Hunter. I think that, if anything, without making it about me, our owners are united, and there are no cracks in the ownership. The blogosphere is like buzzing with all of these owners who are supposedly driving the collective bargaining. The blogosphere has it all wrong. It's absolutely just a fiction, as is the idea that our owners are not united. It's not about me. It's and if there's anything that you need at the NBA, Bill, and I really agree with it, I think I can deliver it.
He also said about you, in the last 6 or 7 years, there's a new group of owners to come in who paid a premium for their franchises, and what they're kind of doing is holding his feet to the fire, meaning you. Where did that come from?
It's fiction. It's fiction.
All right. How worried are you about ticket revenue? Because, just looking at this from afar, it seems like you're almost swinging so far the other way with how you want this pay cut from the players to go that you're almost factoring in, we think attendance is going to go down here, we're worried about season tickets, things like that. Is that a fair statement to make?
No, although you keep making it. It's just getting more expensive to do those things. And that's why it isn't what we want for the players. It's just that 57% is too high. Instead of selling one season ticket, you have to sell 4 10-game packages. Instead of having one customer service representative for that group, you may need 2. You have to use more research. You have to demonstrate better metrics. You have to improve on the spending on your game experience. You have to take account the increase in petroleum prices, so when you charter the players, you can, it costs more. You have to have a security issue, so you need to protect the building, the plane, the travel, and everything else. And so we think, actually, we can continue to grow most categories, including tickets, by offering the game experience that we do. It's just more expensive to do it, and you can't take in $1 that costs you 50 cents to raise and then give 57 to the players. You're down 7%. It's a catch-22 situation. You can't make it up on volume.
Are season tickets too high?
The question. I think they're high, but I think that each of our teams in each of their markets are making judgments about the market. And all I can tell you is that season tickets, even in the face of a lockout, are flat with last year. Yeah. So we've been able to maintain it to this point. And if we were, and as soon as it becomes clear that we're going to have a season, they'll go up. And so thus far, the market is saying that the fans want to see our games, they want to come to our games, and they're in order to do that, they're willing to pay our season ticket prices.
There's been some, it seems like this time around, there's been more stuff leaked to try to make you look bad than I remember in the previous lockouts. One of those things was somebody wrote that you make $23 million a year.
Right.
And also questioned why you had
Go ahead,
decided
ask
to
me ask me anything. You can't. We've been at this for so long. You can't.
Well, listen. No, I don't think I have no interest in what you actually make, but I know that you don't make $23 million a year.
No, listen. If you guessed that that I made half of that, you would be way high. Okay.
Right.
If you were closer to a third, you might be in my range.
But that seemed to be something
That's just something. In fact, I'm going to get thrown out of the commissioners' union for being at the low end. But guess what? I've been doing this for so long. I've made a very good living. And I guess it was 2008 when we started laying off people because of our business performance, I went to the owners and said, I'm going to take a pay cut, and I think it's a good idea, and I'm going to freeze my salary. And I did that with the Audit and Compensation Committee, which is 6 people that know exactly what I earn or what we've done. It's not a secret. Every owner can know it if they choose to, because we review all salaries with the Audit and Compensation Committee at least twice a year. But you see what's going on out there, and it says, oh, nobody knows what Stern makes, and it's just totally ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that was a ridiculous figure.
Well, but by the way, like so many other things, there were no sources, even with respect to the most recent cancellation of the meeting for yesterday, which really, I make the point, is not a big deal.
Yep.
I spoke to Billy, Adam Silver, who's leading these negotiations, spoke to Ron Klempner, who's Billy's number one guy in these things. They both said the players don't want to do it now. We said, okay, we'll reschedule something, and Adam is, I hope, talking to Ron today to schedule maybe something between Ron and Adam and their troops for next week. And all of a sudden, it gets written, an anonymous union official said that the league didn't do something or did do something. We don't have to be anonymous. We're certainly responsible for our actions, and we'll speak. Adam will speak. I will speak. Peter Holt will speak. And you know what? So will Billy. And so I don't know what the game is being played here. I think just a blogger needed to get some counter statement on from somebody else. So they went with an anonymous union official. Because we found Billy to be very direct. Billy, he says what he means, he says what he thinks, and he does what he says. So I don't have a problem with that.
How many times have you gotten mad during this whole process? Because I know for a fact in Miami during the finals, when the players didn't show up for what you thought was going to be a productive meeting, you kind of went crazy a little bit, tiny bit.
Miami.
There was some yelling.
Finals.
Yeah, there was some yelling. You're not going to back me up on that?
Wait a minute. I can't remember, but me yelling? Moi?
Yeah. You were
Very
yelling
possible.
at the player side, asking them to start taking the whole process seriously because you were within a couple weeks.
Yes, but that's, I thought we really had a shot if we could sit down and negotiate and understand each other's positions of doing this in a more effective, shorter time span, because we started out almost 2 years ago by telling them we'll give more than numbers, so that's not going to be an issue. We just got the sense that there was a lot going on that we were not privy to, that somehow involves the agents as well, pushing for this decertification idea. Look where it got, look where Kessler's strategy got the NFL players. And we sort of felt that there were things going on we didn't quite understand. And in fact, that's why we filed the unfair labor practice charge, and we, started the litigation, because we said, look, let's clear this debris out. Let's get down to the basics, because what's going to happen here eventually is we're going to sit across the table from players who have decided that they understand exactly what we've done and what we need and what we're saying, and then hopefully we'll cut a deal.
You like Derek Fisher more or less than the guys you dealt with in 1999?
I love all the players.
Good answer.
Although I must tell you that, I think that in some ways the players in 98, 99 expressed themselves in a more militant fashion.
Yes. Well,
I'm not sure it got them that much, but they did it that way. I appreciate Derek's manner but he also has control of the situation, and he's working hard at it.
What if they came to you and suggested contraction as a possible way to fix this mess? This is something that's never happened under your watch.
Well, actually, it's not a subject that we're against. In fact, when you're talking about revenue sharing, a number of teams have said that if you have a team that is perpetually going to be a recipient, aren't you better off with the ability to buy them in, because between the revenue sharing and the split of international and the TV money, we could almost buy them in with their own money. And the players actually have been heard to suggest that as well, which was interesting, because that means they're suggesting that we eliminate 30 jobs, or the potential for 30 jobs. And so we've said to the players, give us the right to contract. Let's agree upon what the basis will be. Let's make this deal, and then we'll continue to look at that subject. That's going to be driven as much by, I think, teams that are going to say that revenue sharing is inefficient in certain markets. But then again, if you look for volunteers, there aren't many teams raising their hand, and that's an interesting subject.
Yeah, but I mean, just that makes the most sense to me. I think that solves. Listen, I hate the thought of losing basketball teams in one or two cities or three cities or whatever it ends up being. But at some point, if you're going to if the Lakers are basically going to be funding the bottom five teams in the league to keep them afloat, that just doesn't make sense to me economically.
Well, it's a source of some heated discussion internally and across the table with the players, and we understand it. But I understand your view of it, that commissioners try to keep things the way they are. But remember, I do represent 30 owners, and
right.
So the conversation. Knock, knock, come in. Hi, Mr. Owner. I'm here to tell you that I think you should go out of business and no longer own a team. It sort of is something that needs to be done pursuant to a plan, and we'll see how that works after we make the deal and the revenue sharing deal.
To be fair, New Orleans doesn't have an owner, and Sacramento, those guys barely have enough money to make payroll. Those are two candidates right there. You could also merge a couple teams.
To be fair, New Orleans is actually going to be a top 15 grossing team. When it has its 10,000 season tickets and the like, together with an expression of support from the state, it's going to be an interesting team that I'm not sure is a candidate for a contraction. And we'll see. I mean, I just don't want to get involved in a discussion of individual teams, because right now we're working very hard with Mayor Johnson, who is putting together a plan that seems to suggest that a new arena would be a huge economic incentive, $7 billion over 30 years for Sacramento, and has been able to generate support for the project from the entire region. So let's see how that goes before we start talking about contraction.
And he's done some great legwork with that, and I think he's earned the right. And the Kings fans are great. They've earned the right to at least get one more year to figure it out.
You bet.
At some point,
Kings fans
though,
have been terrific.
Isn't there a time limit on that, though? Shouldn't they have 12 months to figure that out, or else
That's
you
what
guys
they
have to move on? Okay.
Dating back to April.
What about mergers? Why couldn't you merge Milwaukee and Indiana and move them to New Orleans, something like that? What's wrong with the idea of merging franchises?
You're trying to get me in trouble with everybody.
I'm just asking.
Okay,
what's wrong with taking?
You know what? We'll examine all of that, but our individual owners are very committed to their cities. Herb Simon is a huge booster and supporter of Indiana, and Indianapolis, and Senator Cole of Wisconsin is a huge proponent of the state of Wisconsin and the city of Milwaukee.
Charlotte.
So it's easy to say, Charlotte is an interesting subject. Okay, we got a long-term lease of a brand new building, and we had a very unfortunate launch of that expansion franchise. And so Michael Jordan is leading sort of what's the opposite of an excavation. He is digging out, but he's building up the franchise in a way that sponsorships are up and tickets are up, and an unfortunate TV deal is being reworked on an ongoing basis. And I think Charlotte will be a candidate for revenue sharing in its current format, no question about it. But
doesn't it frustrate
North
you?
Carolina, we're going to abandon, say that they're not supporting basketball?
Well, that might be a college basketball state.
Maybe, or it might be the state that led the NBA in attendance at 24,000 a game when the Hornets expanded there 20 years ago. I'm getting old. It's actually 25 years ago, or almost.
Right. But you have an Anaheim guy who I think would make for a good owner, and seems like he's willing to overpay to get a team there. You have a Vancouver market that is really dying for an NBA team. The Canadian dollar has shifted. That could be a good place.
Dying.
You have Seattle.
They're not dying. We've met with people from Anaheim. We've met with people from Vancouver.
Seattle.
We are in continued dialogue with Seattle about their prospects for a new building. It's so easy to sit in a someplace else and say, oh, you must be able to go to Vancouver, but the Canucks are doing a great job. They've got a great building. We played there once, and we've had some preliminary conversations, but there's nothing imminent. But Seattle would be a great city with a new building. It always has been.
I have to ask, you have a Clippers franchise that has one of your 5 most marketable guys right now and plays in Los Angeles and could be worth $1 billion if it was run properly. You have an owner that's embarrassed the league a bunch of times. Why don't you have more power to give that team to a better owner?
I have the power that I have, and no more and no less. And actually, I would say to you that on preliminary numbers going forward, that team is the delta between its potential and where it's at is closing. There are increased season ticket sales, increased sponsorship. I think the Clippers are going to be very on the march because of Blake and because of the way the team has been improving in its performance.
All right. But do you not have the power to basically force an owner to sell?
I don't have the power to basically force an owner to sell. The other owners have that power if they choose to exercise it. But it's not something that's exercised on the basis of an opinion of whether something is being undermarketed or underappreciated.
All right, because that's a franchise that, should be raking it in, and now they might because Blake's there. It
actually will be raking it in, I assure you.
All right, at least I feel like you're thinking about this stuff. I'm still really worried.
I'm thinking about little else in addition to how to make more money, which you think I'm not thinking about.
Well, I think you should have a tournament for the 8th seed. I've written about that. I think you should have sponsored jerseys. I think there's things you can do to make a little more cash.
I hung it up on my bathroom mirror so I could see it in the morning and see it in the evening.
Okay,
and be reminded of your perspicacious insight.
Whoa, nice word. So walk me through the next 2 months, and then I'll let you go. I mean, is this just going to be a staring match until
I don't
October?
Think so. I think small group meetings, and then it gets to be September, end of August, September. And we then say, listen, guys, we got to sit down and decide upon a date when the exhibition season is not going to be possible to hold. And we're all going to understand that when we lose that, that's when the NBA's offer is likely to change because there are going to be economic consequences that we're sort of tiptoeing through right now. I mean, we know, for example, that our licensees are cutting back, stores are cutting back on their shipments, time on television isn't being sold, and fans haven't asked for their money back yet. But as we start to move to the season and then movement isn't occurring, then those things are going to be permanent and start biting. And then the owners are going to have to reassess the economics of their current offer, which is to keep the players as close to where they are as possible. Because once those things begin to bite and the losses start, then it's going to be really ugly from an economic perspective for the players, because it's going to be ugly from an economic perspective for the teams. So I see, if we're not, if Labor Day comes and goes without us huddled in, ready to kiss off our Labor Day weekend to make this deal, then we may be headed to a bad place. But I think there's still plenty of time to get the deal done, have the exhibition season start on time. But it requires, I read someplace that Billy's going to do a series of regional meetings with the players, and I think that's a terrific idea. If he's going to be telling them, what our offer is, what the state of the economics is, and how we're trying hard to keep the players as close to their current compensation as possible.
There's a feeling out there that you guys have already giving up November and December. Like you
Oh, gosh,
have
no.
owners trying to get concert dates and things like that.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
I
Because
don't think it's ridiculous.
I'm aware of the fact that if we start losing games and our offer gets worse, the prospects for the loss of the season increase. And that's one thing that I'm going to run scared on, and I assume Billy will do the same thing. Because why would you, if you're a player, want to give up $2 billion of compensation? I just don't get it.
Well, the writers in Hollywood would agree with you. They gave up 7 months of salaries and ended up with a worse system than they had.
No, that's right. And so when I see this, and I do consider myself to be working for the players, they get more than the owners do from every dollar I help raise. The owners get nothing, and the players get 57%. And so if I'm a player, so now we are giving them money now from the make good on the escrow, the extra money to get them to 57%, the licensing money. They're being paid on 12 months basis, and some are getting checks. So they're fortified with dollars, so they have it. So I would love to see them thinking, okay, and then rather than spend it and then start losing my salary because we have no season, and then looking at a reduced deal yet. It doesn't make any sense from a player perspective. And that's what I tell Billy, that's what I tell Derek, that's what I tell their economists, and that's what we tell the players. And hopefully they'll come to understand that.
50-50 split, 4-year contracts or less. I think we're 2/3 of the way here. Last question. What's the latest the 2012 season can start? Like, what is there a date that you look at and you go, we can't go back past that specific date and still have a season?
You know what? If I told you that, you would say it was more of my lack of creativity. So I'm not going to answer that question.
Well, other
than to say, from my perspective, anything other than starting on opening day, November 1, is a big loss for everybody. Because then we're really playing with long sticks of matches.
Well, in 99, it went all the way into February.
Yes, it did. We settled on January. We had a handshake on or about January 5th. But even then, it took us to get the deal reduced to writing, to get the training camp, to do that. It didn't start till the beginning of February. But I'll tell you what, if the sides dig in, I fear that the owners are going to have to make it up someplace, and it's going to come from a reduced offer.
Yeah.
And then that reduced offer makes it less likely to make a deal, and then the season is at risk. And it always upsets me when I hear a player say, "Well, I know we're preparing for the loss of a season." And then what? What's your plan B? My plan A and B is to keep your salary and compensation as close as possible to what it is now, and to come up with a system where any player that comes into it is going to be coming into the most high-paying system in the world, and our sport continues to grow.
Well, for you personally, I would say you have as much at stake as anybody, because I don't see you doing this 15 years from now. This could end up being the last big deal you do. Yeah, listen.
No, you. By the way, I agree with you. This is my last collective bargaining agreement. But frankly, when I leave, I'd like to be sure that the system is one that new owners and existing owners will continue to invest in. Because what is too often lost is that it's the owners who are taking all of the risk, okay? And the sales of our franchises in recent years and months demonstrate that we're heading downward in franchise valuation in a significant way. And although there are new owners ready to buy at that low price, we need to find a way to incentivize them to invest in new buildings, to invest in television productions, to invest in the kind of staffs that they need to make this work, and to invest in salaries for the players. So I consider my goal here, and what all players should want, to be very much aligned.
Well, I'm very scared because I think this would have been a really important season for the league, and you have the Olympics coming up, and you could argue that this would have been one of the better 10-month stretches the league has ever had.
It is going to be. We're going to get it done somehow.
All
okay,
right.
so and when you have players talk to you and they say that the league hasn't given them their audited financials, I'm depending upon you to say yes, they have. And when a player says we need revenue sharing, I'm depending upon you to say you can't revenue share your way out of a loss. You need profit to revenue share, and then it's fair to ask the Lakers and the Knicks and the Bulls and Chicago, indeed even the Clippers, to share revenue with teams that don't have the same capacity.
It's a very fair point.
You know, we're going to make this happen somehow, and I think it's important that people like you help us do it.
I'm rooting for you. I hope you continue to think creatively. I'm here if you need me. David Stern, good luck figuring this out.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was certainly more time than we thought we were getting. That was pretty interesting. I thought the contraction part that he basically admitted they're talking about was the most interesting thing I learned from that podcast. Check out Grantland.com for my new mailbag that I put up today. And check out iTunes and ESPN.com's Pod Center for all the last few BS reports. We will see you next week.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more